Central to a comparison between George S. Patton and Donald Trump is their shared belief in American greatness, their intolerance for perceived weakness, and their tendency to frame leadership as a form of combat. The video highlights how both men clashed with institutions meant to limit or moderate authority, revealing a preference for decisive, personalized leadership over bureaucratic restraint. Their use of emotionally charged rhetoric and clearly defined enemies further unified followers while intensifying polarization. Ultimately, we conclude that during periods of national uncertainty, history often revives familiar archetypes. In this sense, Trump represents a modern adaptation of Patton's aggressive, nationalist leadership style, reshaped for a political and media-driven battlefield rather than a military one. Throughout history, certain leadership archetypes recur in different eras, manifesting through individuals whose personalities, rhetoric, and public personas echo those of earlier figures. While reincarnation is often understood in a spiritual or metaphysical sense, it can also be interpreted symbolically, as the reappearance of a historical archetype adapted to new social, political, and technological conditions. Viewed through this lens, U.S. President Donald J. Trump can be interpreted as a modern incarnation of General George S. Patton, one of America's most iconic and controversial military leaders. Though separated by decades and radically different contexts, the similarities in their leadership styles, public personas, and relationships with power, conflict, and national identity are striking. Both George S. Patton and Donald Trump have cultivated exaggerated, theatrical public personas that dominated the spaces they occupied. Patton was famous for his flamboyant uniforms, ivory-handled pistols, and dramatic speeches that blended profanity with poetic nationalism. He understood the power of image and morale, believing that confidence, real or performed, was a decisive weapon in warfare. Patton once said, "Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser," a sentiment that could easily be attributed to Trump's worldview. Trump similarly has built his political career on spectacle. From his rallies to his social media presence, Trump relies on bold language, repetition, and emotional provocation to command attention. Like Patton, he projects absolute confidence, rarely acknowledging doubt or weakness. In both cases, the performance is inseparable from the leadership. They have not merely led, they embodied their movements, becoming symbols as much as individuals. Central to both men's identities was an intense belief in American exceptionalism. Patton viewed World War II as not just a military conflict, but as a civilizational struggle in which American strength, discipline, and destiny were being tested. His speeches often invoked historical continuity, framing American soldiers as heirs to ancient warriors and timeless martial traditions. Trump's slogan, "Make America Great Again," operates on a similar mythic level. Rather than focusing solely on policy, Trump appeals to a nostalgic vision of national strength and dominance, suggesting that America has fallen from greatness and requires a forceful leader to restore it. Both men have framed themselves as instruments of destiny, leaders uniquely suited to revive a perceived lost glory. This emphasis on greatness also shaped their intolerance for weakness. Patton openly criticized caution, retreat, and hesitation, often clashing with superiors who favored restraint. Trump similarly attacks political opponents, institutions, and even allies whom he perceives as insufficiently strong or loyal. In both cases, strength was not merely strategic, it was moral. Ironically, despite their devotion to national power, both Patton and Trump frequently found themselves at odds with the very institutions they served. Patton's career was marked by repeated disciplinary issues, most famously the 1943 slapping incidents, when he struck hospitalized soldiers suffering from what would now be recognized as PTSD. These events nearly ended his career and revealed the tension between his personal code of toughness and evolving institutional norms. Trump's presidency has similarly been defined by conflict with bureaucratic, legal, and political institutions. He has clashed with intelligence agencies, the judiciary, the media, and even members of his own administration. Like Patton, Trump views these institutions as obstacles rather than safeguards, forces that constrain decisive action and diluted authority. This pattern suggests a shared belief that institutions exist to serve strong leaders, not restrain them. In this sense, both men reflect an older, more personalized model of leadership, one rooted in charisma and command, rather than process and consensus. Patton was a master of motivational rhetoric. His speeches were aggressive, crude, and emotionally charged, designed to shock soldiers into confidence and unity. He believed that fearlessness could be taught through language, that words could harden resolve and create warriors. Trump's rhetoric follows a similar logic. His speeches rely less on detailed argument and more on emotional repetition, nicknames, and stark binaries of winning versus losing. Critics often interpret this as simplistic, but supporters experience it as energizing and clarifying. Like Patton, Trump understands that persuasion is not always about logic, it is often about identity, emotion, and belonging. Both men have also used enemies, real or perceived, as rhetorical tools. For Patton, the enemy was external and literal. For Trump, enemies are often internal, political opponents, media organizations, or abstract forces like the swamp. In both cases, conflict has served to unify followers and reinforce loyalty. Patton embodied a hyper-masculine warrior ethos that glorified aggression, discipline, and sacrifice. He believed war was the ultimate test of character, and that suffering was an essential component of greatness. This worldview left little room for vulnerability or compassion, and it contributed to both his effectiveness and his controversies. Trump's version of masculinity is less martial but similarly rigid. He emphasizes dominance, winning, and resilience, often mocking opponents as weak or low energy. Emotional sensitivity and compromise are framed as failures rather than virtues. While Trump has not operated on battlefields, his political style treated governance as a form of combat, complete with victories, defeats, and enemies. In this way, Trump can be seen as translating Patton's warrior ethos into a media-driven, post-industrial context. The battlefield became the news cycle, and the weapons were words rather than tanks. The idea that Trump could be a reincarnation of Patton does not require belief in literal rebirth. Instead, it reflects the recurrence of certain leadership archetypes during periods of uncertainty. Patton emerged during a global war that demanded boldness and clarity. Trump rose during a period of political polarization, economic anxiety, and cultural transformation. In both eras, a segment of the population sought leaders who promised strength, certainty, and national revival. The Patton archetype, the aggressive, uncompromising champion, resurfaced, adapted to a different arena. Where Patton fought Axis powers, Trump has fought cultural and political adversaries. Where Patton used tanks and speeches, Trump uses rallies and social media. While Donald Trump and George S. Patton differed in profession, context, and historical circumstance, they share a striking alignment in leadership style, rhetoric, and self-conception. Both have been polarizing figures who inspired fierce loyalty and intense opposition. Both have viewed themselves as embodiments of national strength and destiny, and both have struggled with institutions designed to moderate power. Seen symbolically, Donald Trump can be understood as a modern reincarnation of George S. Patton. Not as the same soul reborn, but as the reemergence of a familiar American archetype, the forceful, defiant leader who thrives on conflict and believes greatness is forged through will, dominance, and belief in destiny. In times of uncertainty, history does not always repeat itself, but it often rhymes.